Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. We had an in-camera meeting before this session today, so we have approved the agenda. So we'll just head straight into the order of business. And the first thing is a prize draw from the Saltscapes Exposition. And am I doing that, Ron? Or?
Yeah,
Okay. Oop, I got two. There we go. Yeah, one job. Oh, do you want to read that out? Or? The winner is Paul Rodriguez of somewhere in Nova Scotia. No address. Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to question period. Any questions from the audience?
Okay, Sharon Hicks. My question has to do with the contaminated soil situation. According to the agenda, like some of the contaminated soil is being trucked to Moncton now instead of going to Memramcook. And Jamie Burke did report that he got a good deal for taking some of the contaminated soil to the Moncton site and ended up saving money by doing that, which is great. But if that's the case, then why not take the rest of the contaminated soil to that same Moncton site instead of reverting back to the Memramcook site later on? That's my first question.
I might be corrected, but I'm under the understanding that the Moncton site is not big enough to handle the whole load. Is that right, Todd? Yeah.
I wondered what the reason was.
Yeah.
Thank you. And the figure from the extra funding for environmental monitoring was listed as $60,000. I believe that was correct. And I'm wondering what exactly is being done by way of monitoring. What does that involve?
Dwayne, can you handle that?
So that fee involves all of the testing that has been done so far. The bore testing, or the test pits that we had done down to determine the size of the contaminated area. That includes all of that, all of the testing that have to be sent away to a lab to get analyzed, the samples. There's letters that had to go off and to the Department of Environment. There's additional plan that has to be put together on exactly what it is that's being done. There's follow-up sampling that has to be done. There's monitoring while the material is being trucked out of the contaminated area. And that is all the additional requirements that the Department of Environment requires when dealing with contaminated soil through NGlobe Division of Crandall.
Okay. It just sounded like a lot of money to have somebody standing there watching somebody digging soil up and trucking it away. Thank you for your explanation. And on a related note, I just have one more item here. The original plans included two officially approved dump sites, the Queens Road or Frosty Hollow one, which appears to not being used at present, and the Crossman Road one, which appears not to have been used at all. So then there's the other two needed for the contaminated soil. Then there was some material being hauled to a shale pit in Westcock, and I had asked Jamie Burke about that, and he's explained that it was just a small amount, so it was just going to that wasn't me, going to that location on a short-term basis. But now today, they were doing dumping of material from the construction site out in the West Sackville area again, but further out on the road to Rockport. And it was noted this morning by somebody who lives in that area, and it was later confirmed by following the trucks to see where they were going to dump their loads. So curious as to why the material is now being taken out there instead of to one of the other previously approved sites.
Oh, Dwayne again?
The contractor, the existing site on Queens Road is too soft to be able to get the trucks in there. So the contractor had applied with Southeast Regional Service Commission for these additional 2 sites, and I believe that the approval was provided by Southeast Regional Service Commission.
So how much more material will be taken out there? Do you have any idea before we'd be able to use the other 2 sites again?
I'd have to check with the contractor to know that exactly. I know there's not a lot of uncontaminated soil that's still got to come out of there, but there is definitely some. I'd have to check with them to see exactly how much, and if they do plan to go back to the Queens Road site once it becomes dry enough to be able to get equipment and trucks in there.
Okay, thanks. That's it for now.
Anyone else?
Brian Lane. The soil that was, again, we're talking about the contaminated soil or other soil. Are there any plans for the original soil that's been taken off to be tested for contamination?
I would say no, because that stuff was clear. It just, in the EIA, the assessment, they just, this spot was missed.
Okay, how do we know the stuff that was removed was clear?
That's been tested, I believe.
Is it all tested, or is it the smell testing?
Well, no, they tested the cores they took, but they just happened not to take a core in this particular spot.
Okay, so it's a big area they excavated, so how do we know that that soil is not contaminated too? Just because you've got cores from random spots doesn't necessarily follow. Now that you have found contaminated soil, it doesn't follow that everything that came out is not contaminated.
Logically, no, but it's, there was, that area was where all the CN activity was. And they weren't obviously off in the marsh. So this is the most likely spot you, expect to find it. And again, that particular spot was just missed.
No other spots weren't missed.
Dwayne?
For that. We found the contamination because the excavator was digging and noticed the contaminated black soil and immediately stopped. That same process was followed throughout the excavation of the entire site. So the contractor, when he was digging, if he dug into contaminated area, he would definitely have known that. Department of Environment was also on site to the locations, both locations on Queens Road and the Carter's Pit, and investigated the sites there, and has indicated that they have no issues at this time.
Okay. Next question's on Border Town Festival. I believe the original budget is $12,000 or $12,500. Just going from memory, this was a few months ago. How much of that $12,500 is given out to grants to the participants?
Thank you, Your Worship and Councillors. The whole $12,500 is available. We take applications kind of early in the process, so we could all go out to other groups, but in the end, we didn't have enough applications to give out all the money to other groups, so we're using part of it ourselves for programming. But I think I'd have to check my records to give you the exact amount. But I think about 3/4 of it is going out to other groups.
Okay. As far as the Joel Plaskett, this is Border Town again, what kind of business case did you do to figure out your ticket prices? Watching the meeting when it was approved, you hinted at a $2,500 profit. You were hoping it to be a revenue generator. Now, the price of the tickets, those numbers just don't work out. So did you do a business case, or was this a fly-by-the-pants estimate? You've sold about 112 tickets at $34.50 so far. So that's about 3,000 net of HST. So you have to get over 8,000 plus the Vogue costs at 250 tickets. I don't see how you can actually make money, but you hinted at 2,500. So what kind of business case did you do for this?
I'm sorry, can you explain what you mean by business case more, please?
I didn't hear that.
So could you explain what you mean by business case more?
Well, when you got the approval for the 7,000 plus HST, which is a little over 8,000, you said you hadn't set the ticket prices for this event, but you hinted at it would be a revenue generator. You did. There was a $2,500 figure. It's on the video. But at the ticket prices you've set, you can't. You'll have problems breaking even at the ticket prices you've set. So, what kind of business case did you use for setting your ticket prices?
Okay, Mr. Hanrahan.
My understanding, the 12.5 that's been budgeted, excuse me, is the taxpayers' exposure on the Bordertown event. And in organizing the event, the town looked at how much money they wish to put into an event festival at this time of the year to bring in people to the community. So every event that's being offered, such as Joel Plaskett and whatever else, isn't to be like a break-even or a revenue generator. My understanding of the comment that Mr. Kelly Spurls made was that in addition to 12.5, there are other events that generate revenue, which all will go to offsetting other costs with the event. At the end of the day, the town's going to be, their maximum exposure is 12.5.
Okay, but going back to the meeting when this was approved, he was specifically talking about this one concert, and it would be a revenue generator.
No, it would generate revenue.
He mentioned $2,500 in profit.
Not in profit.
Oh, yeah.
So there wasn't a business case. You don't know how much money was given out in grants yet. You don't know how much money you were going to charge for the tickets. So.
I don't know if anyone's applied for grants, have they, Ron?
Yeah, I think I need to respond to that. Now, you're misinterpreting the way the model works. We have a budget of $12,500, and we only spend that amount unless we can also bring in some revenue, and we're able to bring in more revenue than that, which means we can spend more than $12,500. So the business case is that the town will not lose more than $12,500.
Okay,
We thought about it very carefully. We did the numbers, and we adjusted the price for the tickets based on a conservative estimate of how many we would sell, allowing us to stay within that $12,500 budget.
Will there be a final report on Bordertown that's available to the public for a breakdown of grants plus costs and expenditures?
As with every town program, we provide a complete public breakdown of what we do. It's available to you at any time. It'll be detailed, and you can, we'll certainly present it to you, to council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to, are there any disclosures of interest tonight? And I believe that at one point we were voting on a hiring, not us hiring, but this involves a, sorry? Yeah, the amendment to planning involves a legal, our law firm in Moncton. And Mr. Burke has some association with that law firm through relatives, so he'll be leaving the meeting for that particular motion. Okay, moving on to minutes, and I would remind council these are, we're voting on the revised minutes we got, I suspect, on Friday. First, a special meeting of council closed in camera April 8th, 2019. Can I have a mover for acceptance? Councilor Evans, seconder. Councilor Butcher. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Minutes for the regular council meeting of April 8th, 2019. A mover, please. Councilor Tower, seconder. Councilor Butcher. Councilor Michaud.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to get some clarification on minutes, I guess, and one thing that I noted in this particular meeting and the special council meeting of May 6 is in regards to the minutes, there's questions being asked either under the motion by council and staff responses or during discussion, and I'm just kind of wondering if that's, what determines if that's included in the minutes or not? Because maybe some of that information is pertinent to the outcome of the motion or to further deliberation on a motion that might be coming. So I'm just kind of wondering what kind of garners what's included in the minutes when it comes to questions of from council to staff and their responses.
Do you want to explain? Yeah, sure, explain that.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. Under the Local Governance Act, we try to stick very closely with what their guidelines are as far as minutes, and it is to do the business of the town or the city. Now that our minutes are videoed, and also the second meeting is video and audio, we take out all of the he said, she said. It's very easy when you're taking minutes and people are speaking not to have it 100% accurate. So to place in a set of minutes that are going to be adopted, you know, the best you can when really we need to have the motions, the vote, ayes, nays. So that's what we have followed for several years now.
And just in regards to where we have the other avenue of recording and video now, how long are those available? Is that something that we keep? Or is it something that eventually is discarded as room is no longer available on the server, I guess, or whatever?
No. Thank you. No, all the minutes are downloaded. Those discs are saved, they're stored, and there for a very long time. You're welcome.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay, call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. And finally, the special meeting of council of May 6, 2019. A mover, please. Councillor Butcher, seconder. Councillor O'Neill. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, there's no business arising from the minutes. We'll move on to the Southeast Regional Services. First, the Regional Service Commission. There was no meeting in April because the commissions decided to cut back the number of meetings they have. Still under the Service Commission, this last Thursday, Mr. Acton and I went to a day-long workshop on garbage. Talking about the operation of the Westmoreland Albert or Eco 360 facility. Questions about how we deal with glass compost. This is sort of producer pays for or recycles the material. Several seminar sessions were held, and I think we'll give a complete report on that in the June meeting. And now move on to Ms. Bickford.
Thank you. In the month of April, there were 3 permits issued in the town of Sackville for total construction value of $54,000. This is the same number of permits that were issued by this time last year. However, the construction value is significantly lower than the reported 10.5. That's mainly contributed to a couple large projects that we had at this time last year. So that's what's to account for the discrepancy in the value. The Planning Review Committee in the month of April did not review any requests that pertain to the town of Sackville, but other projects that were worked on were the finalization of the Sackville building bylaw. So that bylaw now has effectively been registered and is in force in the town. Certainly I would welcome anybody to review it and be up to date on the requirements that are in that bylaw. We've also been reviewing sidewalk cafe applications as they've come in, and you'll note that there are a couple that have set up under previous approvals. And we've also been working on our yearly reports, including the planning review and adjustment committee requirements to report to the board the types and numbers of applications that went through this year. As well, you'll find tonight that there is a resolution coming forward before council for a proposed text amendment to the zoning bylaw. And this text amendment is to incorporate cannabis cultivation into the town of Sackville bylaws outside of the industrial zoning, which it presently is now. And it would be looking at introducing definitions for micro and standard cultivation, as well as what zones that would be permitted in within the town. So if there's any questions?
Any questions? Councillor Evans?
I'm just curious about the large discrepancy in the amount of the permits. The process, as I understand it, has changed somewhat, so that if you get a permit, as you should, before you start your project, there's one fee. If you get it too late, if you don't get a permit first, then you must get a permit, and it's twice as much. I think that's what we proved last time. So I'm just wondering, we've had a couple of the Lafford building, Terra Beata building. Those are those are multi-million-dollar projects, I expect. When do you log the value of the project? Is it when they first start, or is it as it's completed, or none of the above?
Generally speaking, when it gets reported to you, the permit has been issued. So the numbers that appear in here are actual issued ones and that have been approved. We often will have the value in ahead of time, but the application is not complete because often there's multiple pieces of information that are necessary to process the application. So as soon as the value becomes available, that becomes part of the application process. So to go back to the double fee scenario is if you have started construction without obtaining your application and providing the fee and that sort of thing, then that's when you would get charged the double fee.
I see. So we've already we've already recorded the values of these projects which have started months ago but are not yet completed. Is that why the value this year is so small, even though these big projects are ongoing?
Yeah, the permit, the fee that we collect is based on at the time that the construction, before you get your permit. So when you make an application, you have to give the value or the values provided depending if there's a cost calculator involved.
Okay, we come to the resolution. I'll ask Councillor Black to read that, please.
I move that whereas council has considered an application from Cox and Palmer, agent to Dan Fillmore, to amend bylaw number 244, the Town of Sackville zoning bylaw, to change the definition of agricultural uses, add additional definitions for microcultivation cannabis, standard cultivation cannabis, and add microcultivational, a permitted use in the agriculture conservation zone. Be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Sackville directs that an appropriate bylaw be prepared to amend bylaw number 244, the Town of Sackville zoning bylaw, that the proposed bylaw be referred to the Southeast Planning Review and Adjustment Committee for its views, that the notice of intention requirements of the Community Planning Act be fulfilled with respect to the proposed amendment, and sets the council meeting on June 10th, 2019 at 7 p.m. in the council chambers at the Town Hall, 31 Main Street, 2nd floor, Sackville, New Brunswick, as the date, time, and place for the public hearing of consideration of objections to the proposed bylaw.
Thank you. Have a seconder, please. Councillor Butcher. And I think at this time I'll ask Ms. Bickford, who's looking like a deer in the headlights, to provide an overview of this, what's happening here.
So essentially what's happening is council is faced with a resolution tonight, which if they wish to entertain a text amendment to the bylaw, they can pass the resolution. And the resolution is simply setting the date for the public hearing of a text amendment, which would incorporate all of those items into it. So it would be an amendment to the text definition of agriculture to remove controlled substances. It would include the definitions of micro cultivation facility as well as standard cultivation facility. And then it would incorporate as well that micro cultivation facilities are permitted in the agriculture conservation zone, and the standard cultivation would be permitted in industrial as well as micro and industrial as well.
Okay, thank you. And again, you're not voting on the bylaw itself, just on the process to start considering changing it.
And it's given the direction for the town, or for staff to seek the views of the Planning Review and Adjustment Committee, to set the public hearing and to hold the public hearing, as well as publish the necessary ads advertising that.
Okay, anyone else have any questions or comments? Call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Record a nay from Councillor Finney. And the motion's carried. Okay, we'll now move on to the mayor's report, and I will read the report Mayor Hyam provided me of his activities. On the media front, he had interviews with Times and Transcript about climate challenges and the strategy for the town and the contaminated land on Lawrence Street. And with the Canadian press, the significance of the Nova Scotia Canada Dike Repair Fund announcement and the status of the Dantamar Dike study. He attended events of the Poetry at Town Hall and the Saltscapes Trade Show. On the community support education front, New Brunswick agencies were at a meeting on the Marshview Engage experience, continued to recruit steering committee members, and working on hiring a research intern to work on the economic value of education and knowledge businesses to the town. On the contaminated soil, he worked to clarify the steps, process, and timing for treatment within council's direction, and he liaised with the MLA on regulatory matters. UMNB, he followed up on a suggestion to DTI on a pilot study to address flooding around railways and examined CN's $45 million investment announcement, and accepted an invitation to join the UMNB Policing Review Committee. At the Zone 2 meeting, requested materials on greenhouse gas impacts of local government decisions. There was an unsightly premises, very good unsightly premises presentation that those of us there heard, and looked at the UMNB committees that are under review. He met with Community Forest International to discuss common interests, and contacted the MLA on education, tourism, contaminated lands, cost share infrastructure, the Dike study, the Acadian tour, climate strike, and the CN pilot study. On the business front, there was an inquiry on the 506 exit north side. There's a 6-person office seeking space in town, and an update from Camtran. And I will say that in the mayor's place, I attended the Mount Allison Convocation yesterday. And again, Dwayne and I went to the Eco 360 solid waste seminar. Again, apologies from the mayor for not being here. He was in British Columbia attending to family matters. Okay, any questions? Okay, I'll move on then to the CEO report. Mr. Hanrahan.
Thank you, Worship. The reports in the package, as well as all the departmental reports, and in reading through those, or as you're presenting them this evening, you'll recognize that once again the past month has been a very busy one, getting ready for spring and summer, obviously. I think the salt trucks are also being geared up as we speak too, so it's been a stop and start period for our outdoor crews, but things are busy. On a more serious note, financially, I think you'll note out here when the treasurer speaks and when the liaison counselors provide the report, you'll see from the auditors, it's again a very positive report from the auditors. They recognize the positive financial situation the town is in, make reference to 2018 as being in good order, and acknowledge the excellent job our staff is doing in administering the various controls and accounting processes in managing the town's financial affairs. And I guess 3 points I just wish to draw to your, take notice of and to the community is just to congratulate the staff on all the department heads in terms of keeping within their budgets in the past year of 2018 in providing the operations and living within the budget that they have in front of them. As you also know, and we'll see in the reports too, the town's been very successful in a number of department fronts in terms of obtaining different grants and federal and provincial dollars to assist us in our operations, both operations and capital, all of which has an impact on our overall bottom line in terms of overall debt. In this past 2018, less needed to be borrowed because there was additional cash to make payments towards our debt. So the reduction in our debt is going down at a faster pace than what was anticipated or budgeted, certainly when we set the budget in 2018. So it's, kudos to the staff in overseeing it, and kudos to council in terms of your deliberations on the budget each year. So with that, Your Worship, I'll leave it at that. As more information available as the departments present the reports, if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to try and answer them.
Oh, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hanrahan? Oh, okay. We'll move on to Finance Administration reports. Councillor Tower.
Thank you, Worship. The information for bills and payrolls is on page 19 and 20, and I can pass it to the treasurer to see if he has any comments to make. It doesn't look like anything glaring, but he'll fill us in.
Thank you, Councillor Tower, Your Worship. On page 19, the accounts payable report is there. The majority of bills in general government, utility government are regular bills. There's no extraordinary items that were paid in general government. Power, garbage, regional service commission payments, utility government, Veolia, and power bills. In general capital, the payment there, the large payment there is for the Lawrence Street Phase 2 payment that is ongoing. And in utility capital, it was payments for water treatment plant repairs that were paid to Veolia that were previously approved by council in the past. And the salary report is on page 20. You'll note the overtime in there. What's not noted is the larger than normal overtime payout in transportation, also as a result of banked overtime payouts from staff. So, in addition to the items listed in the report, if there's any questions, I can answer them.
Thank you, Michael. I have a motion. I move that council accept the bills and payroll for the month of April 2019 as follows. General government, $253,752.75. General capital, $328,745.78. Utility government, $59,977.80. Utility capital, $20,601.10, and salaries of $249,716.55.
Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Black. Any comments? I'll call the question. Oh, sorry.
I noticed that the salaries are up to $249,000. Last month they were 100 and some thousand. Why the large increase?
I'd have to do the comparison and pull it up exactly, but there is larger overtime that was paid out this month. As well, during April, there were some number of students that were hired during the month. So that would be two reasons that I can think of right off, but I can do more research and report that.
It's around 50,000 or so, and I'm just curious to know why such a large increase. But
Okay.
Yeah, Councillor, as well, I believe we had our volunteer firefighters paid in April as well, which was noted in the report as $20,000. So $20,000 there plus approximately 10 in overtime, and then there's some student hires
Thank you. Call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Councilor Tower?
Thank you, Your Worship. The finance report is on pages 21 to 27. Year-end was completed for 2018. The draft financial statements were presented to council at the special council meeting discussion group held on May 16th, 2019, and will be received here for final approval tonight. Thank you to our auditors for this. For the 2018, the general fund finished the year with $62,888 surplus, while the water and sewer fund finished the year with a $9,290 surplus. These amounts will form part of the 2020 budget process and be recorded as revenue for that year. In general, we received $300,000 more in revenue than projected. Some of these items being building permits, sale of assets, fire truck and other items, reimbursement from the province for the prior year's floods, an asset management plan grant from FCM, as well as all departments except Public Works, of course due to snow clearing and street patching, came in under budget projections. The detailed breakdown is included in the audit report. It was estimated that we were going to borrow $591,000, which was for the fire department items and included the cost of a new fire truck. With the excess revenue in 2018 and most departments coming in under budget, we only required to borrow $260,000, which is a nice savings on our debt process. In utility, we were able to charge back the cost of the excavator repair as well as the lift station upgrades and Bridge Street work to the capital of the revenue, thereby requiring needing to borrow only $294,000 of the previously authorized $499,000 for utility. Borrowing for the 2018 projects was submitted and debentures were issued on May 14th. The interest rates for these debentures range from 2.05% to 2.85% over the 10-year term of the issues. The capital investment plan respecting the gas tax funding for 2019 to 2019 and 2023 received approval on April 4, 2019, and we are authorized to spend $367,359 that was requested for paving projects. In addition to this, we were advised that there was a one-time 2018 top-up allocation that would be provided to municipalities from the federal government in the amount of $414,082 for Sackville. A new capital investment plan must be submitted and approved to use these funds. Finance staff continue to work with the ADP to implement a new cloud-based payroll system. Phase 1 is now completed with employees being paid with the new system on May 16th. Phase 2, time and attendance, and Phase 3, HR, will be worked on once the testing is completed for Phase 1. Water bills went out on April 17th and have a due date of May 17th. Finance would like to welcome Julia Cavalier, just like the car, but I can't say it, can I? A current Mount Allison University student to our department for the summer. And that is the financial part of this.
Thank you, Councilor Tower. Are there any questions? No, I believe you have a couple of motions.
I do, Your Worship. I move that council approve the 2018 audit as presented by Stevens and Partners, LLP, at the special meeting of council on May 6, 2019, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign and seal the audit.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Evans. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
And next motion, I move that council appoint Stevens and Partners LLP out of Riverview, New Brunswick, as our auditors for the 2019 year.
Second by Councillor O'Neill. Oh. Councillor O'Neill. Any discussion? Question? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you, Councillor Tower.
Just to point out that the bylaws enforcement report is on page 28, and the animal control report is on page 29. One thing I'd like to point out is that our bylaws officer is getting really comfortable with his job, and he's had a total of 171 violations for the same period as last year, where we only had 91. So he's definitely out watching and following through. And under the animals control, if you'll take note, there were 3 calls on dog bites. I've been informed that one of those dog bites was 2 dogs who belonged to friends who decided they didn't like each other that day. And the other ones were, one gentleman reached in to give a dog a cookie in a car, and the dog wanted more than the cookie, or at least so he thought. And the other one was a neighbor's dog who happened to attack someone who came over to talk to him. And the protocol, she says, is to make sure they've had their rabies shots first. But she also let me know that those 2 dogs, the one in the car and the neighbor's dog, were both released and are now in custody of the bylaws animal control. So that is what's happening with that. And also, there was, it says on there, 2 dog calls for property, dogs on our property where nobody lived. Jamie informs me that actually someone does live there. It was their dog, and it just happens to be that the person who called it in never saw the person at the house ever, and only because, well, he works nights, and when the other guy went to work, the other guy was coming home. So weird as that is. But interesting things happen. And that is it, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Evans?
Yeah, I have a question for the treasurer. Financial statements are not my strong suit, but I see in the statement, there's beside the playground equipment, the expenditure, the amount left in the budget is minus 66.2%, and I would just ask the treasurer, I defy the treasurer to explain it to me. No, I ask him to explain it to me in terms I can understand.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Yes, what that means is that it's 66.2% above budget. So if it hits 100%, of course, it's double the budget. What that item, of course, is this report shows the expenses only. So of course, council had approved $15,000 for playground equipment, but staff was successful in obtaining grants to increase the expenses and increase the project that is taking place at Lewis Fawcett Park. So what you'll see in there is that number will continue to grow, but you won't see the revenue which comes in under general revenue as capital grants from outside sources. So at year end, that overage will be charged back to capital to revenue to offset the additional money that was received in capital grants from outside sources. So you will continue to see that grow above budget, but anything above the budget, and including some of the budget, will be charged back to capital to revenue, which will be offset by the capital grants from outside sources.
Okay,
So the project, essentially, the budget line is bigger. So we're going to spend more than the budgeted amount because we're getting additional revenue, which will show up someplace else. So we're operating, we have enough money. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think it's also worth noting on the finance front that in spite of all the large projects we've been doing, Billy Johnson Park, Bridge Street, Lawrence Street, Main Street, all the stuff we've been doing, the town's indebtedness is actually dropping below what it was 4 or 5 years ago. Okay. Move on to tourism and business development. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The report appears on page 30 and 31, and I'll just touch on a few highlights here. As I'm sure most of you know, the province has closed the Alec Visitor Center, and the municipality has been in communication with the province's tourism department over the closure, see if there's anything that can be done to implement or be implemented to help promote the municipal VIC, including signage. For those not aware, the municipal VIC opened on May 1st with a new waterfowl interpretive display. The Border Town Festival is fast approaching, and for your guide as to what's happening during that event, just please visit sackville.com/bordertown. Also, as mentioned earlier, the Saltscapes was a big success, and ended with the draw that we had, with more than 1,000 guides handed out, and of course 2,000 ginger snaps handed out to visitors. And staff would like to thank Councillors Butcher and Tower and O'Neill and Mayor Hyam for attending and helping along with the booth, as well as the volunteers Ray Fralick, Janice Fay, and Lynn Griggs, and the VIC supervisor Carolyn Hitchcock. Also, the manager attended a Shenectady Historical Site meeting in April, where summer plans for Parks Canada sites were outlined, and it's looking like it will be an interesting summer in the area. In regards to something up and coming, to save the date, June 22nd, we will be celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Waterfowl Park. This begins at 1:30 with remarks by dignitaries at the Dan Lund Park Extension, followed by a celebration at the VIC, including unveiling of the new display. And also, the manager and VIC student supervisor attended a day-long TIANB customer service training workshop in Dieppe in April. It was a good refresher in preparation for the upcoming 2019 season.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Tower.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's more of comments, actually. Saltscape was a blast. Finding everything from, of course, Monet alumni who were out in large numbers that day. And there's about 5 or 6 Tantramar alumni from way back, the very beginning of time with Tantramar High, since I was part of that. And, so which was neat, yeah. But another thing was there were 2 couples who were interested in the new Laffer building and whether any property were still available, because they were looking to move to Sackville. One went to Mount Allison for 2 years and then went out west, and then he's moved back because he's now retiring, looking for a place. So they were both highly interested in getting information, which of course I passed on the email addresses for them to get a hold of them. And they were positive that, you know, they like what Sackville was when they were here, but they like what they see what it is now. And a lot of the stuff they were getting from Saltscape, the information we had in the booklets, they were blown away, but we have that much going on now. So kudos to our great leader in that department. So
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to public property and facilities, and Councillor Evans.
I guess I'm going to read something that's slightly different from what's in the package, but it's on starts on page 32 in the package. Public Works Department continued to repair potholes with a hot patch machine throughout the town and will continue until the 2019 patching program starts. Public Works staff put out the park benches, the bike racks, the kiosk around town during the month of April. Public Works Department installed and repaired several street signs throughout the town during the month of April as well. They performed tree trimming around town in areas where limbs, trees, and shrubs were impeding sidewalks and streets. The Utility Department continued to work on our water meter replacement program. Engineering Department continued to work with Crandall Engineering and Birchill Construction on the construction of the new stormwater retention pond and related works. Month of April brought lots of wet, cool weather. It slowed down construction and made people generally grumpy. However, the contract was able to install some of the Crescent Street culverts, outlet structure for the retention pond, and start the service road near Russell Metals. Some of the contaminated soil, as we've heard, has been distributed during construction and disposed of at a certified facility in Moncton. The remainder of the material will be trucked to Envirom Organics Incorporated in Memram Cook when the weight restrictions are lifted. The CN culvert work started last Monday, and it's done. This report was written before. The engineering department issued tender 2019-7 for St. James Bennett Street infrastructure and road reconstruction during the month of April. During the tender closing, there were 6 tender bids received. Tender results were discussed with council on the May 6th, and Beal and Inch Construction being the lowest tender bid. The motion will be coming forward tonight. Engineering department worked with the Southeast Regional Service Commission to determine the requirements to transfer a temporary cul-de-sac property on Meadow Lane back over to the owner of the property, as a permanent cul-de-sac was established by Beal and Inch at the end of Meadow Lane in 2015. And again, a motion will be coming forward tonight. Town received a letter from the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure indicating that we were successful in obtaining designated highway funding for 2019 to complete the paving of Main Street reconstruction project from 2018 in the estimated amount of $75,000. And that's not nothing in this day and age. To get anything out of DTI in the current financial environment is something to celebrate. The month of April at the Civic Center saw the start of box lacrosse, aerobics, Rod and Gun Club annual barbecue, and several training courses. Looking ahead to the month of May at the Civic Center, we'll host the Maritime Conference, Model Train Show on May 31st and June 1st, and several other meetings and training courses throughout the month. And in the municipal park, staff would like to welcome the farmers market back to Bill Johnstone Memorial Park for the season. Staff have received pricing for a new wooden fence at Lillis Fawcett Park under the 2019 capital budget program, and a motion will be coming forward tonight. Staff have been working with contractors to secure pricing for a new bridge and trail work that will connect the Lund property to the Waterfowl Park. And I'm delighted to report that funding for that, or at least part of it, came from the Sackville Rotary Club. The VE Day celebration was held in Memorial Park on May 8th. Potable water in Beach Hill Park is being installed, made available for the season. And an annual disc golf tournament was held at Beach Hill Park on May 4th and 5th. Staff are working closely with programming and public works on the new natural playground at Lillis Fawcett Park. And due to the construction of the natural playground, a large section of the Lillis Fawcett Park will be closed during construction with an anticipated opening date of July 1st. And the docks have been installed at the Lillis Fawcett Park.
Thank you, Councilor Evans. Councilor Michaud.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I did have a couple of questions. First, I wanted to start with the announcement of the $75,000 from DTI to complete a project from last year, and I just kind of want to get an understanding, because I know for this year the request from council in regards to the 5-year plan was Cattail Ridge. So I'm just kind of wondering how it was that the $75,000 ended up being applied in 2019, and also what does this mean for the Cattail Ridge project that council had identified as being a priority for 2019?
I can answer the first part of that, is that the $75,000 was money they agreed to transfer over this year from 2018, and now they're reporting it as a new grant to us. Yeah. When it's a little bit of political jiggery-pokery, it's not new money, it's stuff they'd already promised us last year. Or they already granted to us last year, and we were able to carry over some of it. So.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. The town did, or the mayor actually received the letter from the Department of Transportation indicating that we were successful in getting $75,000 for the finishing of Main Street. You are correct. We did submit a 5-year plan, and the 5-year plan that we had submitted was for Cattail Ridge / Bridge Street exit 506 area. And then when this letter came in, it indicated that our funding for 2019 was the 75,000 that we had asked for to finish the Main Street project. We did, in addition to the 5-year plan, we also informed DTI that we were not going to be able to finish the seal coat of asphalt on Main Street during the 2018 season. So we're looking for them to carry that money over into 2019 in the amount of 75,000 estimated to finish that project. And then we received this letter. It didn't make mention of Cattail Ridge or Bridge Street or the 5-year plan or the allocated or project that we had asked for in 2019. So I did make a call to DTI, and our contact there is Mr. Raymond Brunn, and he regretted to inform me that all we were getting this year was the $75,000.
Councillor Evans?
Well, okay. I was just going to say, at the zone meeting, there are other towns who are worse off because they had been promised money in 2018 and they haven't got it. So that's why I say it's good news that we're getting it. We're getting it this year. It was promised to us last year, or it was money that was approved for last year. It's not good news. It's not new money, and this is a really harsh environment. The fact that we're getting it at all is good, but it's not net new.
I'd also just add a couple things. I think council is well aware that the funding for designated highway went from 25 million down to 10 million. That announcement came some time ago. And the last thing I'd just like to know, you may have seen some commotion at Cattail Ridge with my summer students, engineering students. We have been doing some surveying in that area, doing pickup. Part of the plan was to do that in anticipation of working on the design, and unfortunately it looks like we will be working on that design throughout the rest of the summer and winter, in preparation that sometime in the near future council may wish to continue that project.
Thank you. Councillor Bichot? Oh, Councillor Finney, I'm sorry.
Yes, I don't have a question, but I'd like to make a statement. Last December, I turned around. It has to do with Crandall and the retention pond and stuff. The thing is, as I mentioned, I have no faith in Crandall Engineering. I still don't to this day. And it's actually proven that I was correct by turning around and having the CN property not be, have them advising staff that actually that property should have been environmentally tested before they actually purchased it. So I'm going to say that I'm recommending that we should tell Crandall Engineering they're no longer needed and start looking for another engineering firm. So.
Thank you.
I did have a couple more.
Okay, go ahead.
Deputy Mayor, and I guess my first comment, I guess, on as we continue on with Cattail Ridge is I know from looking at council's commitment prior to my joining council was that this area was a priority. And I know that with this type of work going on, I'm hoping that council will have an opportunity to sit down here and have a conversation about the next 5 years and the fact that do we anticipate this, and in turn, how do we plan to adopt to the fact that the provincial government isn't applying as much money to designated highways anymore, because we have made a commitment as a council to the folks in these areas, and you know, I think they'll be looking for some leadership from council to say, okay, we feel it's important and we're going to make it happen no matter how much money is coming from the province. My other question is on when will the patching and line painting program start? I noticed that patching has started in Moncton and Amherst. I'm just kind of wondering when we anticipate it to start here in Sackville.
We have a meeting, I believe it's tomorrow, with the contractor to discuss that, and my understanding is they'll be starting in, I think, 2 weeks' time at the latest, I think, the 20th.
Yeah, we expect the patching to start sometime next week, actually, just after the long weekend. So the plant in Amherst should be up and rolling this week, and we should see patching start next week.
Obviously, it's weather dependent, temperature dependent more so than that. So obviously, we've got to have some decent temperatures. Otherwise, the patching doesn't go down the best and doesn't hold well. So we'll be looking for warmer temperatures than what's given this week for sure.
Thank you.
And just one other thing, to some degree, I agree with Councillor Finney. I think that council needs to sit down and have a conversation in regards to the services from Crandall Engineering, just in the fact that there seems to have been some errors happened, and I'm just kind of wondering if we are to maintain a relationship with that company, what's in place to ensure that the town isn't left kind of picking up the pieces. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I have some motions.
Actually, before I do that, I just want to confirm, that's the same reason we haven't done the line painting. The pavement has to be warm enough for long enough to do the painting as well?
Thank you, because I think that was also asked. Yeah, and typically what we try to do is we try to get some of the patching done. So before we do the line painting, otherwise we have these spots that are blacked out and it doesn't work so well. So we'll definitely be trying to get the majority of the patching done before we do the line painting.
Councillor Evans?
Okay. I move that council award tender 2019-07 St. James Street and Bennett Street infrastructure renewal and road construction to the lowest bidder, Beal and Inch Construction Limited, in the amount of $444,303.66, HST included.
I think you got the number wrong.
That wouldn't surprise me. I'll try again. $447,303.66, HST included.
Thank you. Second by Councillor Tower.
Okay.
Any questions? I call a question.
Yeah. Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
Okay.
Councillor Evans?
I move that council award the work for the construction of the wooden fence at Lillis Fawcett Park to Beach Hill Landscaping in the amount of $6,670, HST included.
A seconder, please. Councillor O'Neill. Question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
Okay. I move that council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign and seal all necessary documents to execute the transfer of the temporary cul-de-sac back to PID 706-00465.
Thank you. A seconder, Councillor Tower. Question?
Question.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Councillor Evans. Then move on to recreation programs and events, and it's Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Your Worship. Recreation Programs and Events Group have been very busy. In March, they attended Cops for Kids Camp program at Tim Hortons Camp in Tatamagouche in partnership with a community programming officer. Grade 7 and 8 participants successfully completed 2 projects, one that raised money to install a 3-stream garbage can near the skateboard park, and another to prepare emergency kit bags for those who might be in need. The roller derby and disco were both very successful, with 50 new roller derby players being trained in the sport, 10 new roller derby referees, and 5 new coaches were trained, and over 200 people participated in the roller disco. On May the 16th, we will be looking at hosting a healthy detox diets. The workshop is free, and the people can register at www.sackville.com. They are also accepting nominations for the regular recognition night. Categories include 10+, 25+, and 50+ years of volunteer service within our town, as well as a category for a graduating Tanamar High School student who has been an active volunteer throughout grade school. April, again, was Poetry Month, and a wide variety of events were offered, and the staff would like to thank and congratulate the poetry contest winners. The summer students have been hired. Operation Beautification will take place on Thursday, May the 9th. I think that's by, is it not? Or no? Anyway, we That is it's a helpful little job. It helps clean up the garbage around the town left behind by the winter thaw. On June the 1st, the department will be partnering with the Maritime Federation of Model Railroaders to offer a model railway show at the Tanamar Veterans Memorial Civic Center. The show will be open to the public from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. with a cost of $5 per person, and children under 12 will be able to attend free. The Beach Hill Park Challenge Obstacle Course will take place on July the 13th. Registration is open. If you, to apply, you www.sackville.com/programs. Friday night antique car cruise will return and take place again this year on July the 26th. The Sackville Street Chalk Art Festival will take place August the 23rd and 24th. Partnership between the Sackville Commons, Mount Allison University, and the town has allowed for the hiring of a student to help organize and facilitate the event at no cost to the town. The department anticipates partnering with Bob Edgett's Boxing Club to administer the Agra Spirit Fund to help in the construction of their new building. And after all of that, I have a whole book of motions, so if you would just bear with me.
Well, I think first, Councilor O'Neill, are there any questions on the report? Councilor Evans?
This is a delight, by the way, just to see all the stuff that's happening here. I just want to make that comment first. But my question is for Councillor Black. Will he be prepared to defend his honor at the Beachfield Challenge again this year? Because he's, you know, like Lazarus, can you rise? And the question's directed at my colleague.
Councilor Black.
Probably. I'll try.
Anything else? Okay. Councilor Black.
I just wanted to know what the turnout was for the Operation Beautification. Do you have any numbers on what was collected and how many people participated?
Thank you, Councillor. I don't have exact numbers on how many people participated, but there was about 15 different organizations, including all 3 schools. And I know the Bridge Street Children's Academy alone picked up over 40 bags of garbage out in the industrial park. So there was a fair amount of our garbage picked up around town.
Thank you, Councilor. All right, Councilor O'Neill, you're on for a while.
Oh, yes, for a while. I move that council approve a time exemption from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. as per bylaw number 246, the Town of Sackville Noise Bylaw, Section 5, for the Fall Fair activities to be held on Friday, September the 20th, 2019, and Saturday, September the 21st, 2019.
I have a seconder. Councilor Evans. Any questions? Councilor Michaud.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm just wondering if the mover and seconder would consider adjusting that to 12 midnight.
If you're proposing that as a friendly amendment,
I think I'd like to go back to Mr. Pride.
Okay.
I'm in favor of the 1 a.m.
Thank you, Councillor. As we talked about last week, the 1 a.m. timeframe hasn't been a problem in the past. We booked the bands to end around 12:45 to give a little bit of cushion there so they don't run over the 1 o'clock timeframe, and it's worked out the last few years. So that would still be our recommendation.
okay. So go forward with the motion as read. Call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Recorded Councilors Finney and Michaud opposed. Motion's carried.
Next motion, I move that council approve the temporary street closure of the portion of Ford Lane from behind the post office to the York Street entrance on Friday, September the 20th, 2019, beginning at 8 a.m. until Monday, September the 23rd, 2019 at 1 p.m. in order to facilitate the installation and use of a tent for community events during the Fall Fair.
I have a seconder, please. Councilor Tower. Any questions? Okay, call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried.
I move that council approve permission to the Fall Fair Organizing Committee to operate a bar service in a secured area in the Main Street tent on Friday, September the 20th, 2019, and Saturday, September the 21st, 2019, from 9 p.m. until 1 a.m., subject to provincial liquor and safety laws.
I have a seconder. Councillor Evans? Any questions? You can call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.
I move that council authorize the fire chief as part of the Fall Fair events to complete an application to purchase with MAC Fireworks, Inc. for a commercially organized and operated fireworks display at the Lawrence Street Ball Field on Friday, September the 20th, 2019, with a rain date September the 21st, 2019, in the amount of $7,999. I further approve the temporary closure of Dufferin Street from 6 p.m. until 9:30 p.m. to accommodate the fireworks display.
Seconder, please. Councillor Tower? Question? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.
I move that council approve the closure of Main Street from King Street to Bridge Street from Main Street to Lawrence Street to Queens Road on Saturday, September the 21st, 2019, beginning at 1 p.m. until 3 p.m. for the Fall Fair Parade.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Butcher? Councillor Michaud?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I brought this up at the special council meeting last week, and again, the questions were answered in regards to, I spoke about the fact that there's shade, there's green area, there's residential areas, there's businesses further up Main Street, and I'm a little disappointed to see the route of the parade change. The comments I'm getting back and forth, I've had a couple of comments indicating that it's been great for parking, but on the other end, I've had other people comment that, no, I had a difficult time parking and there was no shade, etc. I'm just kind of wondering if this is just being done because of the participants in the parade, or if we are giving thoughts to the fact of businesses further up Main Street, as well as the residential areas. We have a town hall right here. Council of the day that chose this site indicated that they wanted to pull people further down this way through the town, but yet we're directing our main parade, our main event down Bridge Street and onto Lawrence Street. So I won't be supporting this route, and I'm just want to see if council would consider going back to the old route.
Mr. Pride, did you want to explain again the choice of the route?
Sure, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Last year we were forced to change the route due to the construction here on Main Street. After that route was changed, we had a lot of positive feedback, primarily from the participants of the Main Street Mile and the parade itself, the people walking in the parade. They liked it because walking from the Drew to Salem School, mostly uphill, is a long walk for someone carrying a set of drums or a tuba. So they liked that there was a bit more of a decline and then a straight stretch at the end here on Lawrence Street. That was that, and I actually heard quite a bit of positive feedback from residents about the parade route as well. So I think there's been a mix of feedback overall, but we were prepared to try to accommodate some folks down on Lawrence Street in terms of places to sit with hay bales and maybe some shade structures as well to help with some of those issues. So that's why we continue to go forward with this motion. But at the end of the day, it's up to council. If you guys prefer the old route it is.
Okay, any more comments? Councillor Tower.
Thank you, Worship. Where I like some of his arguments for this, I have received some complaints or inquiries as to why. One of the directions was the hospital. people at the hospital who really couldn't get out down the other way were sitting on that lawn, watching the parade go by, and so it made it much easier for them to appreciate some of the events that are happening. And I also like to echo the fact that Councillor Michaud talking about the idea of that parade going on there. It does draw people farther down the business route and let them know that there's other places in town besides just the downtown core. So I would like to see it go the other way, but of course it's the will of council. So thank you.
Okay, I think at this point, we will vote on the motion on the floor. Oh, sorry. Councillor Finney.
Ron, you gotta keep looking over.
I
here.
know.
I'm in agreement with Sean. As a matter of fact, I think actually the main route is the best one of all. We won't have to set up any shade. We won't have to spend any hay bales down on those main streets. Everything's already there. So why not just leave it as it is?
Councillor Black?
I guess I'll put on my first hat as race director of the Main Street Mile, one of the race directors of the Main Street Mile. The people who ran the mile loved the new route because it was easy. It was mostly downhill and flat, so the speeds were faster than anything we've had in the 17 years that this race has been going in Sackville. So people loved it for that reason. They also enjoyed it because it was easier for them to get out, to get back out. They parked down there. Some of the schools that came, like Riverview, and Bernice McNaughton, who bring 35 kids to this town to race in the Main Street Mile. They parked their bus down there knowing where they would end up, and it was easy for them to get out quickly. The parade participants that I talked to at the end of the parade said that they enjoyed the ending where it was. They found it was a little easier getting around and with the floats, like being able to circle around and get out. I found that the parking down there was a little crazy for me to, typically when the Main Street Mile starts, I park my car at Chris Porter's house. When the race starts, I run to my car, drive up Salem Street, and with permission, and drive up Salem Street and then get to Salem School just as the first participant is crossing the line at Queens Road. This was a little harder for me to get there, but I was still able to make it in time. The people that I talked to when I was finished with the race and stood watching the parade were impressed with the new parade route. That being said, when I got to putting on my council hat, when I got to the family farm day and was just sort of asking people what they thought of the new route, it was a mixed bag. I think some of the younger families in town enjoyed the wide street of Lawrence Street. It was easier for kids to run out and get candy and enjoy it. My parents and some of the other older folks in town who I talked to said that they didn't really like the parade route just because of the reasons that were mentioned, that it was a little hot and sunny, it was tough to get in and out. Maybe some of that was just because it was a new route. Everyone's used to the old nostalgic route. So I'm not sure what to say. As far as the Main Street Mile, I actually think that it's better to have the old route because I like seeing people have to work hard to get up Queens Road for the last sprint to the finish line. But again, whatever council decides.
I think I'll call the question, and depending on the vote, we can maybe have another motion. So, the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nay. Could those, show of hands of those opposed, please? Councillors Michaud, Tower, and Finney. Motion's carried.
I move that council approve SSI Audio to provide sound equipment for the fall fair in the amount of $6,374.55 plus HST.
Have a seconder, please. Councillor Evans. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried.
I move that council approve a grant of $3,000 to Kristen Doncaster for the 2019 Family Day at the Doncaster Farm event from the Recreation Programs and Events Fall Fair budget.
Second by Councillor Tower. Any comments? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.
I move that council approve the closure of Bridge Street from Lawrence Street to Main Street from Friday, August the 23rd, 2019 at 8 a.m. until Sunday, August the 25th, 2019 at 5 p.m. to accommodate the Sackville Street Chalk Art Festival.
You have a seconder, please? Councillor Evans? Comments? Councillor Michaud?
I'm just looking for clarity, because in the report it indicates that the festival takes place on the 23rd, 24th. I've seen stuff published saying 24th, 25th, but yet the closures for the 23rd to the 25th?
23rd and 24th, and then this open.
Mr. Pride?
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, the event itself would be the 23rd to the 24th. The street closure leading into Sunday would give a little bit of extra time for us to be able to take down the stage and that sort of thing, because people would be going into the evening on Saturday, so we wouldn't have everything taken down right away. So it just gives us a little bit of wiggle room to be able to take everything down on Sunday morning.
So you need the full day Sunday? It can't be done in the morning?
The plan is to do it in the morning. It's nice to have a little bit of, like I said, some wiggle room just in case. You never know when something might happen that we just need an extra hour or two. So that's why the motion's for 5 p.m.
Councillor Finney?
I'll be voting against this because of the fact, first of all, I don't think we can afford the $15,000. I think we can put that $15,000 to better use by putting it into roads. We've got roads that are in really bad shape, and that extra $15,000 would go a long ways, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Evans?
Just one thing, I mean, we're closing the road, and then on Sunday, you'll clean it up, and as soon as it's cleaned up, it will open. It will be opened as soon as it's done. This allows for longer, but it will probably be shorter. Just
Thank you. All right, call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? No, Councillors Michaud and Finney opposed? The motion's carried.
I move that council approve the temporary closure of Main Street from Bridge Street to Wellington Street on Friday, July the 26th, 2019, from 4:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. to accommodate the Friday night antique car cruise.
A seconder? Councillor Tower? Any comments? I call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried.
I move that council approve the treasurer to accept up to $25,000 from the Agri-Spirit Fund on behalf of the Bob Edgetts Boxing Club and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign and seal the required documents and approve the transfer of up to $25,000 to the Bob Edgetts Boxing Club should their grant request be successful.
Thank you. A seconder, please. Councillor Evans? Councillor Michaud?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just, we provided some information after the special council meeting. Staff did do a follow-up in regards to some questions that were raised, and just wondering if Mr. Pry could just kind of relay some of that publicly, as it was brought up publicly initially, and council's been given the update, and it'd be kind of nice if that could be provided to council. Or
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Councillor. One of the questions was why Farm Credit Canada required a partnership with the municipality for a nonprofit but not a charity. The answer that I was given was that charities are regulated nationally, so it's easy for Farm Credit Canada to follow up on and understand the legitimacy of the organization, whereas nonprofits are regulated differently from province to province, and in some cases, like right here in New Brunswick, sometimes volunteer groups can apply for grants and aren't necessarily registered at all. So by having the nonprofit partner with the municipality, it's just an extra level of security on part of Farm Credit Canada to make sure that the organization is legitimate. The other question was around the municipality's responsibilities, and once we signed the agreement to to help out Bob Edgetts with this funding program, and they essentially told me that once the agreement's signed and we cut the check to Bob Edgetts, then all the responsibility is off of the municipality, and and Farm Credit Canada would be dealing exclusively with the boxing club from then on out. And the last question was around when the boxing club could expect to find out about whether or not they're awarded the grant, and they told me that that was August. The big reason we've approached council now was that if council did choose not to support this transfer of funds, then it would give the boxing club a little bit of time to look at other options. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pride. Councillor Evans.
Yep, we're essentially vouching for Bob Edgetts Boxing Club, and it's an organization that we regularly support financially, so obviously we think highly of it, so I think it's entirely fitting.
Okay, any more comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you, Councillor O'Neill.
Now I'll go on to the library report. And the library continues to attract more visitors than most other libraries in the region. I think that's a pretty good thing for Sackville. The library is planning a great summer program and will have 2 full-time and 1 part-time employees this summer. Hannah Swanson, returning for her 3rd year, will be the Children's Program Coordinator and will begin starting on work on May the 28th. And that's all of that report. With no motions.
Okay, thank you. So we can move on to public safety.
Hear from me again or not.
Oh, jeez.
Sackville Fire and Rescue responded to 11 calls for service in the month of April, which included 5 vehicle collisions, 3 commercial fire alarms, 2 grass fires, and 1 utility pole fire. Training sessions continued during the month of April. There will be 3 motions coming forward this evening for consideration. Motion to adopt the emergency response plan, mutual aid agreement between the Village of Dorchester Fire Department and Sackville, and appointment of Sean Finney to the position of one of deputy chiefs. The fire department would also like to thank Walter Allen for the past 2 years of service in his role as deputy chief of training. Walter has 24 years of service and with Sackville Fire and Rescue, and will continue to serve his community as a member of the department. Just a reminder, rubbish fires are strictly prohibited within the town limits. And the department would also like to remind us that the 14th annual truck draw tickets are out and about in the business community. And as always, the chief again reminds us that an emergency kit must be prepared or should be prepared to last 72 hours. And the past week, the Emergency Preparedness Week, and staff provided tips every day throughout the week on the Town of Sackville Facebook page, as well as their Twitter account, to educate our residents to ensure they are prepared in the event of an emergency. This information included 72-hour emergency kit, sentinel systems, get to know your neighbor, who to call in an emergency, as well as the use of the portable generators. The post asked that people who saw that would like, if they'd like to share the information, and if they did, there was a chance to win a free 72-hour emergency kit. And it is my pleasure tonight to announce that Jennifer Grant was the winner of the 72-hour emergency kit, with the value of $100. And I have some motions. I think I've taken the whole council over here tonight. I move that council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign and seal the mutual aid agreement between the Town of Sackville Fire Department and the Village of Dorchester Fire Department.
Have a seconder, please. Councillor Finney. Any comments? Call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.
I move that council approve the municipal emergency response plan for the Town of Sackville dated May 2019.
Have a seconder, please. Councillor Butcher? Any comments? Councillor Finney?
Yeah, have a little more information on exactly what this really is all about, please.
Councillor Finney, Your Worship, members of council. The emergency response plan is a plan and it's a guide to guide us, the municipal staff and council during emergencies within the municipality. So if we have something, a plane crash, a train derailment, anything of significant interest, an incident, that we have a plan that is in place that has been practiced by the management staff twice within the last 6 months of what is in front of you this evening. And we're quite comfortable that in the event of a large-scale incident, that we have in the plan what we need to support management and council, as well as for the best interests of our residents.
Councillor Finney?
So were there any changes made in relation to who's in charge, or from what was, I remember years ago when we talked about the EMO plan and stuff, and is there any changes as to who's going to be in charge from the beginning?
So as our plan back then, as it is now, the emergency measures plan reflects an emergency operations coordinator, which is the CAO, and that was in place back then as it is now. So we report directly to the CAO of what all the different departments are happening within their field of work, and then make recommendations of what needs to be done for the betterment and the safety of our residents. So there was really nothing changed as it relates to who was in,
Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.
And my last motion is I move that council approve the appointment of Sean Finney as Deputy Chief Number 2, Sackville Fire Department, effective May the 14th, 2019.
Have a seconder, please. Councillor Tower. Councillor Finney, Michaud.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just in regards to that, could the fire chief give us some details in regards to how the process works in regards to this recommendation? Are there qualifications that have to be met? Does it come from himself and his other officers, or how does this work?
Thank you, Councillor Michaud, Your Worship, members of council. So there was an opening within our deputy chief role within the operations. So as per the bylaw that governs the fire department, it clearly states that when there's a vacancy within an officer role, it must be filled at the next regular meeting by the membership, which was done by the membership. Mr. Finney was elected by the membership by vote, and that recommendation was brought forward to me, which in turn I bring it forward to council for their recommendation and consideration.
Anyone else? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Councillor O'Neill was very quick getting to her motions, so I did have a question actually for the chief. I've had a couple of people in the Beale Heights area, again, kind of approach me in concerns over the blockages of the crossings, and I know this was brought up a couple of months ago, and I think they're looking for some reassurance as to what's been put in place or changed since then. I'm just kind of wondering if possibly some sort of community meeting of sorts within that neighborhood could take place to talk to those folks in regards to their concerns and addressing those so that they understand the process that goes into place if this happens, so that they know that they're feeling secure in that area. So.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud, Your Worship, members of council. So yes, we continue to work with CN on a regular basis to ensure they're at the ready in the event of a similar incident does happen, where there's blockages at all three entrance exit points into the industrial park, but as well as our residential area that falls within that area. So we continue to work with CN. We're quite confident that in the event of something that will happen to that could happen to that magnitude, that we would be able to work with CN to get emergency services into that area within a timely manner. But it's certainly something we could look into to keep them abreast of what those things are moving forward.
I think there's still some uncertainty, and we do have, elderly residents who live in the area, and I think they just want to have a sense that they know that their concerns are being looked after, and that, you know, here's the steps that are taking place, and hearing it from yourself or other members, I think would, and the RCMP would go a long way, I think, in providing them with that sense of security that they need.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to policy bylaw. Councillor Butcher.
Thank you. Overall calls for service were down this year compared with last year for police services. There were 100 calls this year compared with 117 from last year. Mental health calls, related calls, continue to be a drain on resources, though, with 9 of those calls being specifically and only under the Mental Health Act authorities. There were a number of false alarms, and there were 14 property crimes of various natures, but there was no discernible crime patterns. On the traffic side, a number of violations were issued, but were mostly administrative violations, like out-of-date inspections and registrations. There were only 5 speeding tickets issued for April, and there were 2 minor collisions in town this past month with only minor property damage. In community relations, there were several school visits, and some of the officers also took part in the hair reading program at Salem. The annual performance plan tool is being implemented by the RCMP's municipal contract for the town, with the town, and there will be measures and initiatives specific to the town in that. And on May 31st, our CPO will be recognized by the Imperial Order Daughters of the Empire for a Community Relations Award nomination at their regional annual meeting. And that's the report.
Thank you. I apologize for calling policy bylaw for that. I just figured when Councillor O'Neill was finished speaking, it was time to move on. Okay, now we'll move to policy bylaw, and Councillor Black.
Thank you. The report is found on page 42 of the package. The Policy and Bylaw Liaison Group met on April 17th, 2019. Staff continue to review bylaw number 251, a bylaw respecting the procedure and organization of council, incorporating housekeeping changes as well as information received from the survey sent out to council and staff. We'll look to bring this bylaw to the May Policy Bylaw Liaison meeting for discussion. Bylaw number 265, a bylaw relating to the Sackville Waterfowl Park, and bylaw number 266, a bylaw relating to buildings in the town of Sackville, have both received third and final reading and have been placed on the town's website. The employee use of town facilities policy was passed by council in 1997. The information in this policy is also referred to in the town of Sackville protocols policy, which was passed by council in 2010 and supersedes the employee use of town facilities policy. It was recommended during the meeting that the employee use of town facilities policy be repealed. Bylaw number 244, the town of Sackville zoning bylaw. Tracy Wade and Lori Bickford noted that an application has been received to permit micro-cultivation in cannabis in the town of Sackville, which we've heard about tonight. The existing zoning bylaw prohibits the growing of controlled substances as an agricultural use. The proposed location is in the agriculture conservation zone. Staff provided background, noting that when the municipal plan and zoning bylaw review was done during 2016, cannabis was not legalized. In October of 2017, when Cannabis Act came into effect, legalizing recreational cannabis used nationwide, the Cannabis Act created a legal and regulatory framework for controlling the production, distribution, sale, and possession of cannabis in Canada. The application information was provided to council at the special meeting and then reviewed again tonight. And that's the report.
Thank you. Any questions, Councillor? Okay, I believe you have some motions.
Yep. I move that council give second reading, section by section, to bylaw number 258, the town of Sackville bylaw designating roads accessible to off-road vehicles. Public notice is hereby given that the town council of the town of Sackville proposes to enact the following bylaws. Bylaw number 258, town of Sackville bylaw designating roads accessible to off-road vehicles. Section 1, definitions. Section 2, general provisions. Section 3, offense. Section 4, coming into force.
Thank you. Have a seconder, please. Councillor O'Neill? Any discussion? Councillor Michaud?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Since this was given first reading, that allows kind of the opportunity for feedback. I've received feedback, and it's kind of been split down the middle. However, a lot of the comments, even with those who are in favor, go around the fact of the actual vehicles being able or designed to run on roadways, and also enforcement. And those enforcement issues not just being in that area, because they are currently using that area anyway, but also on other streets in more rural parts of the town, such as Walker Road, King Street, et cetera. So I just want to kind of relay that. There seems to be kind of a divide from the people that I'm hearing from, but enforcement seems to be an issue, and I know the RCMP kind of signed off on this, but I'm not sure if the RCMP actually provided us with any kind of detail as to how they plan on approaching that in the Mallard Drive area, and how they plan on enforcing it down the road, if they're going to be doing spot checks or whatever. So,
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Record Councillor Michaud opposed. And the motion's carried. Councillor Black.
I move that council give third and final reading to bylaw number 258, Town of Sackville bylaw designating roads accessible to off-road vehicles.
And a seconder, Councillor O'Neill. Any comments? Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Record Councillor Michaud opposed. Motion's carried. Councillor Black.
I move that council give second reading, section by section, to bylaw number 267, the Town of Sackville Municipal Emergency Planning Bylaw. Public notice is hereby given that the Town Council of the Town of Sackville proposes to enact the following bylaws. Bylaw number 267, Town of Sackville Municipal Emergency Planning Bylaw. Section 1, definitions. Section 2, the coordinator. Section 3, negotiations. Section 4, local emergency. Section 5, declaration of a state of local emergency. Section 6, mutual aid agreements. And Section 7, repeal provisions.
Thank you. Have a seconder, please. Councillor Tower. Any comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried.
I move that council give third and final reading to bylaw number 267, Town of Sackville Municipal Emergency Planning Bylaw.
I have a seconder, Councillor Tower. Call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. And Councillor Black.
I move that council repeal the employee use of town facilities policy.
I have a seconder. Councillor Evans. Any comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, we move on to personnel. Councillor Black.
Thank you. The personnel report can be found on page 44 of the package. The liaison meeting was held on May 3rd, 2019. As of the end of April, there were 35 permanent employees, 2 temporary employees, and 12 summer students. The grievance on call-out provisions has been referred to arbitration, and that remains outstanding. The hiring, well, many of our summer students have been hired and will be coming on staff over the next month or so. Those hired have been actively involved in our orientation program, including a first aid session. And I have a motion as well for.
Thank you. Any questions on personnel? Okay. Councillor Black.
I move that council appoint Becky Susan Goodwin as the assistant clerk effective May 29th, 2019.
I have a seconder. Councillor Finney. Any comment? I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Black.
Sorry, just to give just a little background of Becky. Becky's a lifetime resident of Sackville and a former firefighter in town. She has worked in the administrative area for the past 13 years in the private sector as well as a college environment. She has experience in the area of clerical administration, payroll and benefits, policy research, event planning and organization, as well as HR. And she's a graduate from Tantramar Regional High School as well as Olton College. Becky has also been an active volunteer within the community of Sackville in minor hockey, home and school, and the Sackville Fire Department. And it should be said that she was chosen by all 4 members of the interview committee unanimously as a recommended candidate.
Thank you. Any questions? Call the question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. All right, we'll move on to corporate affairs and strategic development. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The report is in the package, pages 45, 47. I'm just going to highlight a few things here. Also, I'll have a motion. Lionsgate and 4L Strategies Consulting have completed the town's new business development strategy. The highlights of the plan were presented at the special council meeting on April 1st. And working sessions were also had with staff and council on April 24th and 25th. And as I mentioned, the motion will be coming after my report. The resident survey has been completed. It's on page 47. There was 159 people who participated in the survey compared to 110 last year. And a couple of things just to kind of point out here. Of the persons who took the time to take the survey, 93% support the current fire services, 87% are happy with the garbage collection, 77% with town parks and facilities. So an overall 80% rating. Also, there was different mediums used in order to get the message out. In order so people could participate, newspaper, civic center signboard, reminder in the reception here at Town Hall. And we continue to try to find ways to reach people. And as always, everybody's feedback is always welcome, no matter if there's a survey or not. Staff have fielded a variety of property inquiries over the month, including information on new construction, properties available for rent, expansions and startups, as well as sales. Staff are also assisting the Parks and Facilities Department and Public Works Department with the approvals necessary for the Sackville Rotary Club's bridge project that will eventually connect the Waterfowl Park with the recently acquired Lund property. And also, I'd like to point out that staff are working or have been working on a town's annual report over the last month in advance of the June 30 deadline. The new Local Governance Act requires municipalities to prepare an annual report in accordance with Regulation 2018-54, annual report regulations. The intent of the annual report is to provide information to residents and increase the accountability and transparency of our operations in one location. And we're also doing that on our own through our own municipal site and through social media.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. Are there any questions or comments? No? I believe you have a motion.
I do. I move that council approve the Town of Sackville Business Development Strategy 2019.
I have a seconder. Councillor Tower. Councillor Michaud.
And I'm just wondering if Mr. Burke could just speak to that in regards to next steps in the process and what might be transpiring in 2019, and then so that we know where we're going from this point.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. I'd be very pleased to do that. I guess we're really excited to have this piece of work wrapped up. Finally, this is a really important document for our organization, our entire community. So you're right. To a large degree, we largely set our priorities going into budget season. So it's an appropriate question to ask in terms of what do we do now and kind of adopting this strategy midway. So a few things. I guess we'll start hopefully tonight with formally adopting the strategy by motion of council to demonstrate council's commitment to it. And that then gives kind of Ron and I direction in terms of what we're going to be working on, specifically with respect to the business development strategy over the coming month. So first off would be we would see the establishment of the mayor's roundtable on economic development. So who would be on that committee would be question number one. We'd then look to create a terms of reference for that committee so that people who were signing on and asked to sign on knew what they were getting into, terms of appointment, mandate, et cetera. The business development strategy recommends that we take a relook at the grant criteria that we currently have, both with Renaissance Sackville along with our Heritage grant criteria, which we've kind of put on hold given the Heritage Board in the end of last year. And then kind of rounding out, I guess the top five would be looking to possibly put a piece of work out for a consultant to create a retail or highway commercial prospectus of how we would look to market our existing retail and highway commercial areas within the community. And then the other five main points would be that we really continue doing what we're doing and having success with. One of which would be the ongoing efforts of our business retention and expansion training programs that Mr. Kelly Spurls runs, our food safety handling, board of governance for nonprofit organizations, business opportunities for artists, et cetera. We continue with our ongoing marketing campaigns, both on the tourism side of things, but also looking for strategic partners and other publications of where we can look to reach an appropriate market for our community, which we do on an ongoing basis. Another thing we would look to continue with in 2019 is working with the region, with the Southeast Workforce Action Team on workforce development for the entire area. We know there are a lot of jobs in the region, and employers are having trouble filling some of those positions. So there's a team that's been established across Southeast New Brunswick to help come up with a strategy, a separate strategy on how we look to fill those positions. And then I guess attached to that is proceeding with some of the mayor's efforts on educational reform, which have kind of spun out of the Sackville Schools 2020 initiative. And then the last two things, one would be partnership development. So we do know that there's certainly a large degree of interest from the Greater Moncton Chamber of Commerce on potentially starting a Sackville chapter. So we're hoping that's one of the quick wins right out of the gate, is to have the Greater Moncton Chamber of Commerce come to Sackville. We will help with the organization and promotion, but the Greater Moncton Chamber would be largely responsible for running and hosting the meeting, and just look to see if there is interest amongst our own business community to potentially establish a Sackville chapter of the Greater Moncton Chamber of Commerce. So that's an enormous opportunity for some of our local businesses. Could be a very big opportunity. And then lastly, the business development strategy focuses on what we can do to market our employment lands. So our industrial parks, our business parks, the large unserviced area that we have appropriately zoned up by the Walker Road exit. And we have a 2019 capital project underway for some signage improvements at our, where we've taken over the old former Chamber of Commerce signs and looking to establish some new signage in the industrial park. So I guess out of the gate here for the rest of 2019, those would be the major initiatives that we'd be looking to get started with.
Thank you. Any, Councillor Blanc?
Jamie, if we adopt this tonight, will the document become public? When will it become public? How will it become public for people to take a look at?
It's been public since April the 2nd. The day after the council meeting, we posted on the website, which we typically do. So the final adopted version would be posted tomorrow morning under our document section of the corporate site.
Councillor Black?
It's more of a comment, but when we met and discussed this further, I mean, I can't speak for the rest of the council that were there, but I left feeling really positive about this. I think that it's a great document. There's a lot in there, and I urge people to wade through it. There's some fantastic information in it, and there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot to cover, and the range of sort of expectations year by year of what we can hit and targets we can hit and metrics for measuring how we do in economic development in the town of Sackville is all covered in this document, and it's just fantastic. And I guess it's interesting to have this come up now when we see the resident survey and 42% of people are happy with economic development, which means that, you know, and in the residents have expressed interest in seeing more focus on jobs for residents and attracting businesses to Sackville. I mean, this is something we've talked about for the last few years, and it's vitally important. And as I was leaving that meeting, I had mentioned it to Jamie and to the mayor that as a councillor and somebody who lives in town and as a former business owner, sign me up. Personally, whatever I can do to help this process along in any sort of committees or even consultation, I'm game, I'm in. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Anyone else? Okay, call a question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nay. Record Councillor Finney opposed. Motion's carried. Again, under Corporate Affairs and Strategic Development, I'd like to call on Councillor Black to speak to the most recent climate strike.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the report, it said there was a follow-up to the Global Day of Action. There was another climate strike on May 3rd. I just wanted to start this off just with a quick quote. A major UN report was released on Monday, May 6th, that found that human activity has put as many as 1 million species of plants and animals at risk of extinction, many within decades. The report found that as human population passes the 7 billion mark, activities like farming, logging, poaching, fishing, and mining are altering the natural world at an unprecedented rate. Today, 75% of the world's land-based habitat and 66% of its marine life have been severely altered by humans, which is a pretty incredible statement. Anyway, so there was a climate strike on May 3rd of 2019, and it started at the Sackville Commons at 1 o'clock. The place was packed full of people from all age groups, but the majority were kids. It was a day off of school. It was beautiful, one of the best days we've had in a while, and there were tons and tons of kids from all the schools that had opted out of hanging out outside and having fun, instead putting their efforts into climate action. There were 3 presentations before the strike and a couple of students that talked about the end result of the climate strike that day. The first presentation was by Sarabi Sheth from the New Brunswick Environmental Network. She had been trained in Al Gore's climate reality training program that he's been doing throughout North America. And she basically just looked at the facts of global warming and climate change in our area, but also sort of globally and the reality of it. It was pretty dark and stark, but intensified the belief that together humanity can make changes that will turn the tide. Second presentation was from Sabine, who gave a shorter version of the presentation that she gave to council about rising sea levels in Sackville and what can be done to make the change. As far as kids were concerned, she talked about things like not cutting down as many trees, planting more greenery in your property or in your town to help with stormwater, and generally being aware of climate issues at hand. The final presentation was by Lizzie Gresh, who is the executive director of the Gaia Project, which was a group that I honestly can say that I'd never heard of before I went to this. They're a nonprofit charitable organization with the mission to empower youth to take action on climate change. And she talked about how their group is working to get climate change and climate science into the curriculum of schools in New Brunswick as quickly as possible. The provincial government is talking about a 3-year plan, but of course with climate change everything needs to be sort of now, so they're lobbying really hard to push the government to speed up that process. A couple things I wanted to mention, just for people who are listening. She had mentioned there were a couple of funding opportunities. One of them is called Rising Youth. They're an outfit that's put together by the provincial government and the federal government, and their requirements for getting funding for kids to do projects in their community range from $250 to $1,500. It could be climate action, it could be community and partnership building. Their requirements are so loose and willy-nilly that she had pushed people to sign up and get some sort of funding to help the community. So something I just wanted to spread the word about. And the other one was iHub.ca, which helps teachers get climate action projects in their classroom. And again, their funding requirements are basically nothing. Just put your name in and you'll get some money. So spread the word. So after the presentations, everyone sat down, we wrote some messages and drew pictures on some pre-addressed postcards. And then we carried those down the Bill Johnstone Park to Lawrence Street, and then down down Bridge, or York, then down Main to the post office, where we met. Before leaving the Commons, we were joined by a large group from Kairos, who were having their Atlantic gathering at Mount Allison. And they're a joint venture ecumenical program administered by the United Church of Canada, and they were there talking about climate change. There were a few moving speeches from some of the marchers, and one from MLA Megan Mitten on the steps of the post office, and then we all lined up and mailed our postcards to Catherine McKenna, the Minister of Environment and Climate Change. So there was probably 120 to 140 people that were involved in the march overall. Very well attended, very passionate, and I was there with my 10-year-old daughter who wanted to do that instead of hanging out with her friends that day. So I was really pleased and inspired. So thought I'd let everybody know.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Just if people think we're immune in this area for some reason, I can echo the remarks made according to the UN report. I spent about 30 years studying ecology around the Bay of Fundy, and I can tell you the diversity of animals is dropping dramatically. Stuff that we found regularly in the late 1980s, I don't even bother looking for anymore because you can't find them. So it is affecting all of us. Okay, there being no new business, we'll move on to the question period. Mr. Work.
Yes, I have three questions. The first one is a technical one. It concerns the top-up from the federal government, $414,000. And I understand that the town will have to submit a new capital investment plan for that. I'm wondering if that's the kind of money that could be applied, say, to Cattail Ridge, which is a priority for the town.
Do you want that? Or,
Sure.
Mr. Hanrahan.
Basically, staff has, I think the treasurer had indicated earlier, would get together and identify a number of projects that it could be applied to, and Cattail Ridge could be one. It would all come back to council to decide how and where they wish to see money allocated. You know, the one thing about the designated highways at 506, it's provincial money, it's provincial highways where they used to do 100% funding. They then moved it back to have the province or the municipalities pay for 15%. So if the town was to say, yeah, we'll do that, it would be at the expense of their roads in order to do and cover the provincial highway.
Right.
So.
I understand the $75,000 that will be coming through is tied to Main Street. It can't be diverted.
Correct. You're correct, as I think has been pointed out by several people, that $75,000 is really unfinished work. The paving hasn't been done up the hill here on Main Street towards Queens Road. So it's really just to finish that project, put a finished coat on. And so that cannot be, you know, redirected to any other project.
I'm wondering about an update on the Lawrence Street retention pond. I'm wondering how it went with the installation of the culverts under the CN rail tracks.
Mr. Acton?
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
Yeah, how the installation of those culverts under the CN rail tracks went. Is that work complete now?
Thank you. Sorry, I missed a section. Yes, the work has been completed. It started. They arrived on site on Monday. The site was somewhat prepared by the contractor Birch Hill. They set up the necessary equipment, and I believe by Wednesday at noon they were complete. Both pipes pushed through very easily. and there was no movement to the tracks. The tracks movement was monitored by CN's consultant and by our consultant, and everything went as planned and well, and finished well ahead of schedule on that aspect.
And just one follow-up, how much work remains to be done in order to complete the ditching there, the control structure and so on, so that the water can flow the way it will eventually flow under Crescent Street and into that ditch on the other side?
So if I start backwards from the ditch leading out to the Abbado, I'll start from there. So the culverts, pipes under Crescent Street are now complete as of today. The ditch leading over to the outfall of the CN new culverts is complete, and the new culverts under CN are complete. And then the ditch leading back to the outlet structure is probably, I'd say, about 95% complete. There's a few pipes that need to be added to the outfall of the outlet structure to the retention pond that still have to be completed before, let's say, the water that could be in the retention pond would go out the proposed route.
And if you had to give a figure on the overall Lawrence Street, this phase of the Lawrence Street project, what percentage of it would you say is now complete?
For the overall project, I mean, we were 85% on the retention pond. You know, there's still that 15% of the retention pond that has to be done, but the bulk of most of the other work is, I would say, at least 80, probably 80% to 90% complete. So all the ditching, the culverts, the service roads, there's still some tidy up to do on some of the service roads around the pond. There's some work on St. James to be done, and there's a bunch of work along, I'll say, parallel with Lawrence Street on would be the west, the northwest side of the retention pond. They still have to be completed, but the contaminated area is kind of holding that up to a certain degree, but they are looking to remove some of the uncontaminated soil until we sort out the trucking of the contaminated soil.
Thank you. And finally, I'm wondering about the legal implications of the town having a bylaw which allows children, as I understand it, as young as 6 to be operating motorized vehicles on 3 of the busiest streets in town. Did the town seek any legal advice as to its exposure if anything were to happen as a result of this bylaw being enacted by the town and allowing this kind of traffic in such a congested area of town?
It's been quite some time since we've had that discussion around the table, Bruce, and we'd have to check it further. But it seems to me it's the Motor Vehicle Act that is in play, and so you know, you'd have to have a license to be able to operate on the highways if you know, and or whatever is permissible as far as the ATV Provincial Act as well. So we'd have to check that just to verify for sure, but I just seem to recall, I just seem to recall that, you know, you said 6-year-old. A 6-year-old, I do not believe can be on the ATV on any of our streets operating.
No, they can't.
No, that's my recollection. Sorry, you.
Councillor Evans?
When the RCMP spoke to us about this, it was my understanding that they had to follow the Motor Vehicle Act. And the Motor Vehicle Act says that if you're going to operate a motor vehicle on the highway, you have to have a driver's license for one thing. So I would think that would preclude 6-year-olds. So I don't know that, but I find what you say hard to believe, right? So I expect if you check with people who know, that they will confirm that.
I think that answers it for me then. If a person who is operating a motorized vehicle on Mallard Drive, for instance, has to have a driver's license, then there's no issue there with children.
My understanding is that if you have a farm and you have an ATV, your child is allowed to operate it. Like that's the RCMP doesn't get involved. I don't know the law, but it's like kind of like having your child drink wine at home. It's up to you. But my understanding, what the police said, is the Motor Vehicle Act will be enforced on the road. That was my assurance, and the Motor Vehicle Act clearly says you don't operate a motor vehicle unless you have your driver's license. So.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Anyone else?
Sharon Hicks again. As a member of the Exit 506 Committee, I was going to ask a question about Cattail Ridge, but that's kind of been shot out of the water. But I do have still a question regarding that. The town had budgeted $110,000 towards Cattail Ridge for this year. So if no work is being done, what happens with that money that was budgeted?
Mr. Beal.
Yeah, thank you. What will happen is, it is no different than any other capital money. It's capital out of revenue money. It will be reallocated and looked at as we approach year end in how much we have to borrow for projects and everything. That money was made up of two areas. It was made up of our 15% portion plus some non-covered expenses. So as we get into the year end and into December, when we look at adjustments coming out of the money coming out of the reserve fund to pay for Phase 2 Lawrence Street, money going into the reserve fund for unfinished capital projects, that money will be looked at that time. When we budget for 2020, if council is again making Cattail Ridge the #1 priority, then we will budget our portion once again in 2020, either through our capital out of revenue or through the reserve fund if we set the money aside in there.
Okay, so just to clarify then, that $110,000, only 15% of that was coming from the town's pocket?
A portion of that was our 15%, plus a portion of that was non-covered items that go beyond the curb-to-curb area.
Okay. Okay, and I'm curious too about the Main Street project in front of the hospital there. The base layer of asphalt that was put down last year didn't winter very well. It's in terrible shape. There's a lot of big potholes, a lot of cracking areas where it's just literally crumbling. My curiosity is, would that layer have to be removed and replaced in order to put a top coat on it, or can it be repaired again? I know it's been repaired already. Can it be repaired again and then topped, and will that affect the overall longevity of the whole project, of the surface?
Mr. Acton?
Yes, those areas will be repaired. They'll be cut out and removed. The gravel underneath will be evaluated, make sure that everything is fine underneath. If new gravel is required, it will be put back in, compacted. New asphalt, base asphalt will go back in, and then we'll be leaving the road for a while just to make sure that nothing else is changing over first part of the summer, and then when we're comfortable that everything is in good shape, we will then be adding the seal coat to the top.
Okay, so if there's a lot of repairs needed, will that add to the amount needed to fund the rest of the project?
We budgeted for some repairs on the base asphalt until we get it all dug out and know the total. I won't be able to answer that 100%, but some of the base asphalt that we felt maybe needed was budgeted for.
Okay, okay, thanks.
I've just got a couple of quick questions on the retention ponds. Page 33 says this quarry pond has come up again, where staff is working for Phase 2. We don't own the quarry pond. It's never been approved as far as I know. Is there going to be any money left for Phase 2 after the contaminated soil is left? So why are we...
Mr. Beal?
Yeah, there still will be some money remaining. I don't want to give an exact figure, but there still is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars that will be remaining from the overall budget that was approved through federal, provincial, and municipal infrastructure. So once the final invoices are in for Birch Hill construction and all the contaminated soil is finalized, we will evaluate what is remaining, and there still remained other parts to Phase 2, which may include Quarry Pond and/or ditching, and that will be evaluated as we progress through the summer to determine where the remaining funds of Phase 2 would be allocated.
Okay, so they're just being proactive there.
Correct.
Page 46, the last paragraph. We've been helping our legal team with a series of land transactions that ends with our eventual long-term solution. Now, perhaps I'm reading this wrong, but does this mean we've actually done some transactions for land for a possible long-term solution? It's not clear. Like, is there a long-term solution that's been approved beyond Phase 2, and have we acquired land for that?
Mr. Burke?
Without a doubt, there is absolutely a long-term solution. We've talked about it in this chamber and with this council on numerous occasions over the last 2 years. I think what we did and what council gave us instructions to do from the onset was that we had an original plan and scope of work which we put out to tender. We all know what happened during that tender process. The tenders came in too high, so we moved with a second option to be able to do part of the project and still make an improvement to the flooding within that area. However, we still went out and purchased the property to achieve the long-term solution, and we had direction from council to do that.
Okay.
Thank you. If there's no one else? Moved by Councillor Tower, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. All those in favor? We're adjourned.